Hi. A lot of people worry about the safety of herbs and the question of are all herbs safe? The answer is no. There are many herbs that are dangerous at certain doses and can be really bad for all sorts of things, especially the heart um, and just general toxicity. So the word toxic can be deceiving. A lot of herbs are called toxic, which is true, but a lot of things are toxic. For example, magnesium could be toxic at a really high dose. Of course, you're going to need it to be injected into your veins for it to be that bad of a dose where you could actually slow down your heart and die. But that's not possible from taking it orally through a pill form. So you could say magnesium is potentially toxic, which is said about a lot of herbs. And magnesium is potentially toxic because it can potentially kill you. So the dose is very important. So my point here is a lot of these herbs that you read about being very toxic or they may not actually be good for you. There is some truth to that, but most of that is misunderstood and seen as simply black and white. Is it good for you or is it bad for you? Well, even water is bad for you if you drink too much water. So the question isn't, it shouldn't be so simple. So yeah, herbs can definitely be dangerous. Generally speaking, if you're taking most reasonable doses, herbs are not going to be dangerous. Um, so another thing that comes up is a lot of the times there are herbs that are said to be liver toxic, and this can potentially be true, but generally speaking, I usually dismiss it for the most part. Although there are a lot of people who do have problems with certain herbs, and some people have allergic reactions. And I've definitely experienced that where somebody took an herb that I recommended and they had a reaction to it. And that does happen. Same thing happens with food, though. Same things happen. Same thing happens with anything that you ingest. You could be allergic to anything. Even just breathing something in, you could still have that same reaction. So the problem is in the media, if you want to call it that, or the internet, or wherever you hear information, sometimes doctors, they'll say that sometimes an herb is liver toxic. And a lot of the time this comes due because the liver is really prone to inflammation. And so if there's anything that somebody is having a sensitivity to, a lot of the times it will manifest in the liver and you'll see inflammation in the liver. And the liver is also responsible for breaking things down. Um, so it tends to affect the liver. And because of that, it's deemed liver toxic. Now, is it actually toxic to the liver? Probably not. Probably not inherently so. However, it can be at certain doses for certain people. And generally, a traditional herb, it's going to be very rare that it actually does that because it's been used for thousands of years. These traditional herbs, at least coming from like a real tradition, have been used for thousands and thousands of years. And some people may have a reaction. It might not even have been from that herb, but this is how it usually goes. Somebody takes an herb, they have a reaction, they go to their doctor, the doctor documents it. 10 years later, another person also has a reaction, whether it was even from that herb, is even that's questionable. It probably was, but maybe it wasn't. It's just anecdotal evidence, really. And a doctor writes that down. It gets documented somewhere, somehow. And then what happens over time is there's like maybe 5 or 10 incidences in all of history, all of recorded history, that somebody had a reaction to that herb and it happened to be causing nausea or some sort of something associated with the liver. And so then it gets deemed liver toxic. This is very common. Now, there is one exception where comfrey actually potentially can cause scarring in the liver, which is something that I would avoid. It's possible that it might not actually be that big of a deal. That's controversial. I steer on the safe side and just avoid it internally because there are other herbs that you can take to replace it. For example, if you want to take comfrey internally, you can, generally speaking, replace it with an herb called gotu kola. And gotu kola is amazing, and it has the same sort of cell proliferation, healing effects as comfrey. Gotu kola is spelled Gotu space Kola, and it traditionally comes from India, but it's also used in Western herbalism and grown in the United States as well now. So, and that herb has also been called liver toxic in some references here and there. As far as it actually being liver toxic, I really, really, really doubt it. It's comparable to spinach. Sure, if you eat a lot of something at once, potentially anything can be bad for you. You could eat so much spinach that it could give you a stomach ache. You do have to watch out for a lot of herbs, though. A lot of herbs can cause nausea and can put a lot of stress on the liver. And so you just want to make sure that you're taking the proper doses. You want to take a small dose and work your way up. A lot of the times textbooks will say a high dose for an herb and a low dose. Or if they don't say a low dose and a high dose, you should start below what the high dose is and work your way up. Because sometimes the toxic effect is that you're just jumping into it too quickly and you're taking too high of a dose right off the bat, and your body is not used to it. In fact, I just experienced this the other day, where I was taking Arjuna tea, and I drank too much of it at once because I hadn't had it for a while, and I took what I would normally take, but in the past I had worked my way up to that dose, and I hadn't done it for a while, and then I took that dose, and I felt kind of nauseous and didn't feel very good at all. And that was my mistake for jumping to a high dose right off the bat. I should have worked up to it slowly. So these are things to keep in mind. Generally speaking, most herbs are not toxic, and even if they are toxic, toxicity is a relative term, and it's really dose dependent. There are some chemicals out there where they're just inherently toxic to the human body, but when it comes to herbs, I don't think that that's the case. I think that there's a specific amount that's not going to potentially cause harm to your body, because that's what toxicity means. It means that it's compromising an organism's basic functioning. So, be careful with herbs, but also realize that herbs are commonly labeled damaging because people don't understand what the proper dose is, and because people have reactions, just like people have reactions to food, but that doesn't make that food toxic. So, thanks for watching. Check out down below, I'll post my website and Facebook, and check out my other videos if you liked this. Thanks.